We often think of islands as passive dots on the map, places for tourism or trade. But in geopolitics, islands can redraw the balance of power. And in the South China Sea, China isn't just claiming islands, it's creating them. At the heart of the strategy lies one objective: control over water. Not just the surface, but what lies beneath: the fish, the oil, the gas, and most importantly, the trade routes. Nearly $3.5 trillion in commerce passes through these waters annually, and international law, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, or UNCLOS, says that countries are entitled to exclusive economic zones, or EEZs, extending 200 nautical miles from their coastline. Within that zone, a country has sovereign rights over fishing, drilling, and other resource activities, even though the waters remain international for shipping. So, if you can extend your coastline, or better yet, create one where none existed, you're also creating new economic and military leverage. This is why China has been pouring concrete over coral reefs. It's not about land, it's about influence, maritime, economic, and strategic. China bases its claim to nearly the entire South China Sea on what it calls the 9-dash line, a vague, U-shaped boundary that stretches deep into the maritime zones of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. But here's the problem: UNCLOS doesn't recognize historical claims, only geographical ones. And in 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague ruled that China's claims had no legal basis. China ignored the ruling. Instead, it accelerated construction. By late 2013, China began a massive land reclamation effort on 7 reefs in the Spratly Islands, many of which were submerged at high tide and legally classified as low tide elevations under international law. That means they can't generate territorial waters or exclusive economic zones. But Beijing moved fast. Giant dredgers poured sand and cement into the sea. Satellite images began to show runways, radar domes, deep ports, and defensive emplacements. By 2016, the international press dubbed the effort the Great Wall of Sand. And despite international outcry, China did not stop. From a strategic standpoint, the artificial islands serve several purposes. 1. Power projection. With military-grade airstrips, China can deploy fighter jets, bombers, and surveillance aircraft from the mainland. 2. Anti-access area denial, A2AD. These islands form part of a broader strategy to push the US further away from China's coast and give the PLA greater control over first strike zones. 3. Surveillance dominance. High-frequency radar installations allow real-time tracking of ships and planes across the region. 4. Civil-military dual use. Ports that welcome fishermen one day can support submarines the next. The creation of artificial islands hasn't been just about pouring concrete. It's about redrawing reality. China's Coast Guard and maritime militia, often disguised as fishing boats, harass neighboring vessels, ram Philippine boats, deploy water cannons, and attempt to blockade resupply missions to contested shoals. These aren't full-scale military battles, but they're not peace either. This is gray zone warfare, calibrated, deniable, and persistent. And it's effective. Land reclamation comes at a cost. To build these islands, China destroyed over 3,200 acres of coral reefs, ecosystems that took thousands of years to form. Sediment smothers fish spawning grounds, anchors and turbines destroy marine habitats, fisheries collapse, and coastal communities suffer. Yet under the cover of infrastructure, this destruction continues. International law says you can't claim an exclusive economic zone from an artificial island. Only naturally formed land counts. But China's logic isn't legal, it's strategic. By establishing de facto control, by building runways and radar domes, by stationing troops, it creates facts on the water. Over time, these become accepted by others, either by exhaustion, intimidation, or pragmatic resignation. Even now, ships from Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam must often ask China for permission to fish or drill in areas they legally control under UNCLOS. This is territorial creep by design. The United States has responded with freedom of navigation operations, sailing warships through contested areas to assert the right of passage. But these are symbolic. They don't stop the construction or reverse it. Meanwhile, alliances like AUKUS and strengthened US-Philippines military cooperation have grown in response to China's encroachment. But they operate in a tense balance: deter without provoking, assert without escalating, a delicate game in a dangerous neighborhood. This isn't just an Asian problem. 1/3 of global trade flows through the South China Sea. Energy supplies, commercial shipping, and undersea cables all run through these waters.
What China is doing isn't just building islands, it's testing how far you can stretch international norms before they snap. If Beijing succeeds here, others may follow. Russia in the Arctic, Turkey in the Aegean, or future challengers in the Atlantic. The South China Sea is no longer just water. It's geopolitics, concrete, sovereignty, and law. By building islands, China has built leverage. But in doing so, it has also built friction. And as the waters rise, both literally and diplomatically, the question becomes, will these islands anchor peace or instability? Because in a world of artificial islands, the real challenge is knowing where the shoreline ends and the red line begins.